You remember the exact night it felt like everything inside you collapsed. Your chest felt tight. Your thoughts were loud. Your future looked blank. You told yourself, "I am breaking." It did not feel dramatic. It felt heavy, slow, suffocating. Like something inside you could not carry the pressure anymore. You tried to stay strong. You tried to distract yourself. You tried to tell yourself it would pass. But deep down, you felt exposed. If you were truly broken, why are you still here? Why are you still turning back to Allah, even after doubting? Why are you still getting up for prayer, even when you feel empty? Why does your heart still react when you hear the Quran? A completely broken heart does not seek Allah. The fact that you still do is proof that something inside you survived. What you called breaking was not destruction. It was demolition. And demolition always looks violent before it looks purposeful. When an old structure is unstable, it cannot simply be decorated. It has to be torn down carefully. The cracks must be exposed. The weak beams must be removed. The foundation must be reinforced. That process is loud, dusty, uncomfortable, but necessary. There was a version of you that depended too much on people's approval, a version that felt secure only when others stayed, a version that believed control belonged to your plans. That version could not survive the level of trust Allah is building in you now. So He dismantled it. He allowed the disappointment. He allowed the delay. He allowed the separation, not to destroy you, but to detach you. You felt the shaking in your relationships. You felt the fear in your finances. You felt the loneliness in your quiet nights. But something inside you did not die. Your faith did not disappear. It became raw. Before, you prayed out of routine. Now, you pray out of need. Before, you mentioned Allah casually. Now you whisper His name when no one sees. The storm did not remove your faith. It stripped away everything that was hiding it. And that is why you stand differently now. You speak less. You trust more carefully. You depend on Allah more sincerely. You are not as easily impressed by people. You are not as desperate for validation. You are not as confident in your own control. And that is not weakness. That is awareness. What collapsed was never meant to carry your future. If Allah had allowed that weak version of you to continue, it would have eventually collapsed under greater pressure. So, He chose to remove it early. The pain was not pointless. The shaking was not random. The tears were not ignored. They were part of the design. This was not your breakdown. It was the careful removal of what would have broken you later. And Allah never removes something from a believer without preparing something stronger in its place. The storm came because your old life could not carry your next level. There was a time when everything felt normal. Your routines felt comfortable. Your circle felt familiar. Your goals felt clear. You believed you were moving forward. But sometimes comfort is not growth. Sometimes comfort is limitation in disguise. You were asking Allah for more. More success, more impact, more closeness to Him. But you were still holding on to a life that could not carry that level of elevation. You wanted expansion while staying attached to what was small, and Allah knows something you do not. He knows that the version of you He is shaping cannot remain surrounded by what once felt sufficient. So the storm came. It did not announce itself. It did not warn you gently. It simply began to shake what you thought was stable. Conversations changed. Opportunities slowed down. Certain people grew distant. Plans that once felt certain began to collapse. You thought it was loss. But what if it was clearance? When a building is about to be extended higher, the structure must be strengthened first. Extra weight cannot rest on weak beams. More responsibility cannot sit on an unstable foundation. You were praying for growth. Growth requires space. And sometimes Allah creates space by removing what is too small for your next season. There were relationships you had outgrown, but were too emotionally attached to leave. There were habits you had normalized, but that were quietly limiting you. There were dreams you thought were big, but in reality, they were smaller than what Allah has written for you. So the storm began removing them, not to punish you, but to protect your future, because what you are becoming cannot coexist with what you were clinging to. Elevation requires separation, clarity requires distance, and maturity requires discomfort. The old life felt safe because it was familiar, but familiar does not always mean beneficial. If Allah had allowed you to stay in that comfort, you would have remained average in your faith, average in your discipline, average in your trust. The storm forced you to depend on Him in a way comfort never could. It forced you to rethink your priorities. It forced you to rebuild your habits. It forced you to see who truly stands with you when convenience disappears. And in that shaking, something powerful happened. You began to grow beyond your old limits. You became more selective with your energy. You became more focused with your time. You became more serious about your relationship with Allah. The storm did not come because you were failing. It came because you were outgrowing your surroundings. Allah does not pour a greater destiny into a crowded heart. He clears it first, painfully, quietly, completely. The life that fell apart was not your final design. It was a smaller chapter closing, so a greater one could begin. Your old life could not carry your next level, so Allah redesigned it. And what feels empty right now is simply space being prepared for something heavier, stronger, and more aligned with your true purpose. Allah shook your world to remove what was quietly destroying you. There were things in your life that did not look dangerous. They felt normal. A relationship that drained you, but you called it love. A habit that weakened your discipline, but you called it stress relief. A distraction that pulled you away from prayer, but you called it balance. Nothing looked dramatic. Nothing looked sinful in a loud way. But slowly, quietly, something inside you was weakening. Your focus was scattered. Your sincerity was fading. Your heart was becoming attached to what could not save you. And the most dangerous damage is the damage you do not notice. Allah sees what you cannot see. He sees where a path leads years before you reach it. He sees the heartbreak before it happens. He sees the spiritual emptiness forming long before you feel it fully. You may have been comfortable, but comfort was costing you something deeper. So Allah shook your world. Not all at once, but enough to wake you up. The relationship ended. The opportunity disappeared. The routine was interrupted. And suddenly you were forced to face yourself. You thought it was unfair. You thought it was too much. But what if staying would have destroyed you more? Sometimes Allah removes what you refuse to release because you were emotionally invested, because you were afraid of starting over, because you convinced yourself that you could manage the damage. But Allah knows when something is slowly eroding your faith, and He loves His servant too much to let them drift too far. The shaking was mercy. The separation was protection. The loss was a rescue. You were holding on to something that felt safe. But safety without barakah is illusion. Allah does not remove something good from you unless He is saving you from something worse. And now, with distance, you can see it. You can see the red flags you ignored. You can see the compromises you justified. You can see how tired your soul had become. The storm was not random. It was intervention. And intervention always feels painful before it feels protective. Allah shook your world because He was protecting your akhirah, not just your comfort. And what was quietly destroying you had to be removed loudly so you could finally let go. When everything left, Allah was teaching you He is enough. There is a kind of loneliness that changes you. When the messages stop, when the support fades, when the noise of daily life becomes quiet, you sit alone with your thoughts. And in that silence, you begin to realize how much you depended on things that were never permanent. You depended on people to reassure you. You depended on outcomes to calm you. You depended on stability to feel secure. Then Allah removed those supports, not because He wanted you to feel abandoned, but because He wanted you to understand something deeper. Dependence on creation always comes with fear. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of disappointment. As long as your heart leans fully on people, your peace will always be fragile. So Allah allowed you to feel what it is like when everything else shifts, so that you would finally turn completely toward Him. In the quiet nights when you had no one to call, you called upon Allah. In the moments when no one understood your pain, you spoke to Him. In the times when you felt weak, you placed your forehead on the ground and cried in sujood, and something changed. Your prayers became real. Not routine, not mechanical. Real. You were no longer praying because it was time to pray. You were praying because you needed Allah. That is where true strength begins. When your heart understands that Allah is not a last option, but the only constant, people leave, money fluctuates, plans collapse, but Allah remains. When you truly understand that what is written for you cannot miss you, anxiety begins to lose its power. When you understand that what misses you was never meant for you, regret begins to fade. The loneliness that once felt unbearable becomes sacred, because in that loneliness, your relationship with Allah deepens. You begin to seek Him before seeking advice. You begin to trust His timing more than your own. You begin to feel calm, even when outcomes are unclear. That calm does not come from the world stabilizing. It comes from your heart stabilizing in Tawakkul. When everything left, Allah was not emptying your life. He was emptying your heart of false dependencies, so that when you say, Hasbiya Allah, it is not just words, it is conviction, and a heart that truly believes Allah is enough cannot be shaken the same way again. The fire you cried in was the fire that refined you. There were nights when the pain felt too personal. Not just difficult personal, it felt like something was being taken directly from your heart. You asked Allah to remove the hardship. You begged Him to calm the storm. You wondered why the test had to be so intense. But purification is never comfortable. Gold is not shaped in cool air. It is placed in fire. And when it enters the fire, it does not understand what is happening. It only feels heat. But the one controlling the fire knows exactly how long it must stay. Your hardship was not random heat. It was measured. It burned away illusions. It burned away arrogance. It burned away false confidence. Before the storm, you may have trusted too quickly. You may have spoken too quickly. You may have relied too heavily on your own understanding. After the fire, something changed. You pause before reacting. You think before trusting. You ask Allah before deciding. That refinement did not come from comfort. It came from pressure. Pain revealed your weak spots. It showed you where your patience was thin. It showed you where your ego was sensitive. It showed you where your faith needed depth. And instead of destroying you, it strengthened you. The version of you before the fire may have appeared strong on the outside, but inside, there were cracks. The fire did not create the cracks. It exposed them so they could be repaired. Every tear you cried in sujood was washing something away. Every sleepless night forced you to confront your fears. Every disappointment taught you not to anchor your heart in what fades. And notice something important. You did not lose your iman. You did not walk away from Allah. You ran toward Him. That is not destruction. That is purification. Allah did not place you in the fire to consume you. He placed you there to remove impurities that would have weakened you later. And now, you carry a different weight. You are not easily impressed. You are not easily shaken. You are not easily fooled. There is depth in your voice now. There is caution in your decisions. There is sincerity in your dua. The fire refined you. And refinement always feels painful before it feels powerful. You survived because you are being prepared for something heavier. Pause and think about what you survived. The conversations that broke your heart, the uncertainty that kept you awake, the days when you did not know how things would work out. At one point, you truly believed you would not handle it, but you did. Not because you are extraordinary, but because Allah was carrying you. He does not test beyond capacity. If you survived it, it means it was within your ability, even if you did not feel strong at the time. There is a difference between destruction and training. Destruction leaves nothing behind. Training leaves you stronger. What if everything you went through was training? Training for a responsibility you cannot yet see. Training for leadership in your family. Training for a deeper connection with Allah. Training for influence that requires maturity. You cannot carry heavy responsibility with a fragile mindset. You cannot lead others if you collapse at the first difficulty. So Allah strengthens you quietly. He stretches your patience. He deepens your empathy. He humbles your ego. He allows you to taste hardship so that when you meet others in pain, you understand them. He allows you to feel helpless so that when you gain strength, you never become arrogant. You are being prepared for something that requires depth. And depth is born through difficulty. If life had remained easy, you would have remained comfortable. Comfort rarely produces resilience. The storm added weight to your character, and weight builds strength. You now respond differently to stress. You now approach decisions more carefully. You now recognize that control belongs to Allah. These are not small changes. They are signs of preparation. Allah does not refine a servant without purpose. He does not train a heart without intention. If He allowed you to survive the storm, it means He is not finished with you. It means there is more ahead. More responsibility, more growth, more elevation. And the next level requires the strength you just built. You were not surviving for nothing. You were being prepared. And preparation always comes before promotion. The storm didn't come to end you. It came to elevate you. There was a time when you believed storms only meant loss. When something shook, you assumed it was the beginning of the end. When something left, you thought it was proof of failure. When something hurt deeply, you believed it was punishment. But now, you see differently. Because you survived. And survival changes perspective. The storm that once terrified you has now become a memory. Not a pleasant one, but a powerful one. You walk differently now. Before, difficulty made you panic. Now, difficulty makes you pause. Before, you reacted quickly. Now, you respond with thought. Before, you depended heavily on outcomes. Now, you depend more on Allah. This shift did not happen in comfort. It happened in chaos. The storm did not destroy you. It repositioned you. It forced you to rebuild your priorities. It forced you to detach from what was temporary. It forced you to confront your fears instead of hiding from them. And something remarkable happened in that process. You discovered that you are not as fragile as you once believed. You discovered that your iman is deeper than you thought. You discovered that even when you felt alone, Allah was closer than ever. Elevation does not always feel like success at first. Sometimes it feels like subtraction, like loss, like isolation. But elevation requires separation. When Allah intends to raise a servant, He first purifies them. He removes distractions. He removes arrogance. He removes dependence on creation, so that when the elevation comes, the heart can handle it. Imagine if the storm had never happened. You might still be chasing what drained you. You might still be trusting what was unstable. You might still be building your security on what could collapse at any moment. The storm interrupted that path, and interruption was mercy, because Allah's plan for you is not temporary. It is eternal. He is not only shaping your dunya, He is shaping your akhirah. The pain taught you sabr. The uncertainty taught you tawakkul. The loneliness taught you sincerity. These are not small lessons. These are foundations of elevation. The next time a difficulty appears, it will not feel the same. You will remember that you have been here before. You will remember that storms have limits. You will remember that Allah measures every test. And instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you may begin to ask, "What is Allah preparing me for?" That is growth. That is elevation. You are no longer the person who collapses at the first sign of pressure. You are the person who lowers their head in sujood and says, "Ya Allah, I trust you." That trust is strength. That surrender is power. The storm did not come to end your story. It came to rewrite it. It stripped away what was weak, so what is strong could rise. It humbled you, so you would remain grounded when success comes. It purified your heart, so that when Allah opens new doors, you walk through them with gratitude instead of arrogance. What felt like an ending was a preparation. What felt like destruction was design. And the one who designed you knows exactly what he is doing. Every storm that passed over you carried purpose. Every tear carried meaning. Every moment of confusion carried direction. You were never abandoned. You were being elevated. And elevation in Islam is not about status in the eyes of people. It is about closeness to Allah. If the storm brought you closer to Him, then it did not destroy you. It honored you. It refined you. It elevated you. And what Allah elevates, no storm can truly break.